very good afternoon, Jai Hind to one and all here. I, Satya Pulkuri, Associate Editor for the Forum. I welcome you all to the Day 2 of the International Counter-Terrorism Conference, organized by Indic Researchers Forum, featuring interactive sessions with esteemed guest speakers. Indic Researchers Forum is an independent think tank that aims at bringing out quality research on geopolitics, national security, culture, history, social sciences through a civilizational perspective. On this note, let me welcome our key speaker, Air Marshal Anil Khosla, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, retired to deliver a keynote address on Balakot Airstrike, Indian Air Force in counter-terrorism operations. Before we begin, allow me to give a brief introduction about Anil Khosla, sir. Air Marshal Anil Khosla, sir, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal, retired, is a former Vice Chief of Air Staff, Indian Air Force. While in service, he has handled Doklam operations with China and Balakot strike against Pakistan. An alumnus of the National Defense Academy, he was commissioned in the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force. As an air officer, he has the credit of over 4,000 hours of accident-free flying, mainly on the different variants of Jaguar, MiG-21 and Kiran aircraft. He has worked extensively with the Army and the Navy and has also been associated with a number of government ministries and agencies, including NTRO, DRDO, ISRO, NDMA and Defense PSUs. He was also involved with the formulation of Air Force war plans, force structure, planning and capability building. He holds 2 MPhil degrees on defense and strategic studies, currently pursuing PhD on China. How does the dragon's brain think? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Indic Researchers Forum, and for giving this opportunity to share my views on the subject. And thank you for the kind words which you said. A very, very relevant theme for the seminar. I must compliment IRF for that. And the timing is also perfect. You know, the world is suffering from terrorism in a big way. And India is going to host the Security Council on 29th October for a meeting on counter-terrorism. So I think timing is also perfect. Well, I've been asked to speak on role of air power or, Indian Air Force, but generic role of air power in counter-terrorism operations. And in our context, maybe a little bit about Balakot operations. So before I start on that, let me put a few things in perspective. You know, as if the terrorism has become a norm actually in the world, and especially in terms of gray zone operations where, you know, non-state actors are being encouraged to perpetuate terrorism in target countries. And we have been suffering for quite some time because of Pak-sponsored terrorism, and having failed achieving their objective, that is for Pakistan, by the means of war, repeatedly, 47, 65, 71, Kargil, they have resorted to a cheaper option, that is, perpetuating terrorism, sponsoring terrorism, giving them shelter, to non-state actors and the terror groups, giving them training, giving them support and funding them. So that is where we are at the moment. This seminar, I understand, is all about understanding terrorism around the world and how to deal with it. That is the most important part of the seminar, which I'm really, I appreciate the organizers for conducting the seminar. Well, surface forces, the second part of the perspective is the surface forces, that is military, paramilitary, police, agencies, government agencies, various state and central administration. They directly and visibly deal with the terrorism and the acts of terrorism, and they're perpetuated. Whereas the air power or the use of air force is generally invisible, behind the scene, as you say. Air power is definitely involved in counter-terrorism operations, and not only invisible way, but also in a visible way. In the West, the airstrikes by drones and other means are regularly carried out. And in our case also, Balakot operations also changed that approach. I mean, the use of air power was undertaken for the first time across the border. Okay, so how does the APAR get involved in the counterterrorism operation? In three ways. One is the direct application of force, that is your through the medium of air. Okay. Second is mitigation or of the situations arising out of acts of terror or occurrences or attacks. And third is protection of the air assets from terror attacks. I'll just dwell upon these three one by one for 2 minutes each. So direct application of force, like recent example is attack on Al-Zawahiri in Afghanistan. That was a direct attack from the air. And to some extent, even Osama bin Laden attack was through the medium of air, through the special forces being inducted and de-inducted into the zone. Well, the options generated by the air power for application of direct force are very, very wide. It ranges on one end of the spectrum where it is rap on the knuckle, and to the other end of the spectrum where punch on the nose or a very, very punitive action can be undertaken. So this depends on what sort of target you select, what number of targets you select, location of the target. Like in Balakot, it was deep inside Pakistan and not restricted to POK. Amount of force you use. So these factors, when you take combinations, you get various options available to the decision makers. Then there is a general feeling that area of application force is through only fighter aircraft. It's not so. It could be fighter. Drones have become a very, very platform of choice these days. It could be from helicopters as well. Okay, as far as the weapons are concerned, besides the kinetic weapons of guns, rockets, and bombs, I think preferred option now is standoff weapons with precision, smart weapons, that is. And this is mainly so because the terrorism, generally the terrorists hide maybe at times in the urban areas, and there the collateral damage is not desirable. So precision and standoff weapons have become a weapon of choice. Okay, another one factor about application, direct application force is, in counter-insurgency. So what happens is counter-insurgency also have acts of terror, but generally they are in the own country. And generally the force is, force through the air is not applied in own country against own people. The classic example is Northeast. I've seen it firsthand when I was posted there. People still have scars on their minds of the air power being used against them long time back. So that is another factor which needs to be. So in our case, Balakot is an example where the direct application was force was applied, and the trigger, all of us know, was the Pulwama attack where 43 of our warriors lost their life. And this air attack was carried out on the Jaish-e-Mohammed camp, which was in Pakistan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area. And first time in our context, the air power was used against a terrorist camp deep inside the enemy territory. And it was a paradigm shift in our approach. And in this case, the message was, very, very clear. It was a well-chosen target, not even in the forward, launch pads of the terrorist organization, but deep inside Pakistan. And this is the target was where there was a concentration of trained as well as under-training terrorists in the camp, and as well as trainers were present in the camp. The message was to the terrorist organization, to the supporters and perpetrators of terror, that is the Pak government, ISI, and Pak military. And it was not against the common people of Pakistan. That is why the target was so well chosen. There was no collateral damage. It was an isolated camp on a hilltop, and the strike was carried out. The message was that our patience has run out. The cost of perpetuating terrorism for you will go up, and we have the resolve to go up the escalation ladder if required, if need be, and we will use the air power as well, and in future also. The punitive action will be high in case you continue doing what you're doing. So that was a message which was very, very clear. There are another 2-3 factors related to Balakot airstrike. One was, we had a very high level of legitimacy by the selection of target and not going in for a, overkill or not going in for avoiding collateral damage. Second aspect was, Generally, it is considered that the use of air power is escalatory. In this case, the escalation was well controlled after the strikes, and it was not that we straight away got into war situation. Third factor, very important, is the Pakistan was perpetuating this terrorism under the nuclear umbrella, or keeping one hand keeping his nuclear saber and rattling it, and on the second hand doing all these actions. So that myth was broken, that there is scope available for a conventional response even under a nuclear overhang. So these are the factors related to Balakot airstrike. Now, the second part of use of air power in against counter-terrorism is, mitigation of disaster situations. And so out of the Terror Act, this template is available. Actually, is akin to what we have disaster relief, that is HADR, what we call human assistance and disaster relief. And importance of what things which are factors which are important in this mitigation is, one is mobility, air transportation, the reaction time, and Airforce provides that rapidity of mobility, in terms of inducting military, paramilitary, NDRF, special forces by the medium of air. And second is, supplying relief material, providing weapons and equipment, sustenance, medical aid. So air mobility becomes one of the factors in these situations. And aircraft are always kept on standby at various notices to have a quick reaction. The second is, situational awareness in terms of airborne ISR assets, in terms of fixed wing helicopters and UAV, electronic equipment, and as well as aerial recce. So the situational awareness, as is called eye from the sky, eye in the sky, helps in building up the situational awareness. Other factors are, casualty evacuation, sustenance of force. Very important is airborne command post, by having a specialist aircraft like C-130 or a helicopter or a UAV overhead and giving an aerial picture and assisting in command and control functions. And last and important is also firefighting. These days, the air assets have become very costly. The concept which have come up is, roll-on, roll-off kits. So these specialist aircraft which we have, they can be, you have these roll-on, roll-off kits, and the role can be changed at a short notice. So that is where the future is heading. Okay, third factor is protection of air assets. So air assets are very, very costly, and in case the terrorists are able to attack and neutralize, their returns to them are quite high in terms of the results of the attack. And there have been examples in the neighborhood as well as in our own country. Like we had an attack in Pakistan, Sri Lanka on a military base. In India, we had quite a few attacks on our military bases in J&K. We also had, Balakot, Pathankot terrorist attack 4 or 5 years back. Then we had recently attack on Jammu airbase with a grenade type of a weapon was dropped from the drone. So we have these examples where we have been, attacked from the medium of air. So we need to protect our assets. And the bases which are there, they have their ground defense as well as passive air defense, but we need to strengthen them so that, we don't fall prey to these attacks. The second is, these drone attacks, which have become quite common now. Even drones are smuggling weapons and narcotics and other things across the border. It has become a big threat world over. It's not only in India. I mean, a lot of solutions are being found. So being worked on to mitigate the problem of subconventional threat by the drones. And it's a whole new dimension in the air defense. So what is being worked upon is a sort of a multi-sensor approach with multi-weapons integrated into it, into a hybrid system, and which is artificial intelligence based. Second, a few more issues related to base security or the asset security are, you have to have procedures in place, a very good liaison with sister organizations, military, civil, paramilitary agencies all around, even civil defense. You need to have a QRT concept for quick reactions. technology you need to utilize in a big way. You have smart fences, and you have a lot of equipment on the fencing and other places wherever VA/VP is there. And it's not only related to the Airforce, actually it is related to all VA and VPs and the organization who are protecting it. Then last and most important factor in this is training and having specialized forces to protect these assets. So that is the third. So in conclusion, I would say that the air power has a big role, both visible and invisible, in counter-terrorism operations. And the involvement in our context of the air power is increasing by the day. And I think we need to reorientate a little bit to meet the challenges and the threats of counter-terrorist operations. We need to equip for it, we need to train for it, and we need to enhance certain capabilities so that we can effectively deal with this problem. So with that, I have finished, sir. In case there are time and is there any questions, maybe I can answer them, sir.